Okay, let's see. That's turned off, that's turned off, that's turned off. That appears to be turned on. Seems to be turned on. I think we're ready to go. Are we ready to go? I think we're ready to go. Okay. Oh, I forgot something. I forgot to change my background. Let's do that first. There we go. Because this is technically a lecture. Alright, everything seems to be set. Then let's go ahead and get this started. Hello! Shadowcat back! And yes, I know it's been a long time since I have done a lecture. And believe me, it's not for lack of wanting to. I have wanted to, it's just been difficult to find the time to do so. But we're going to be doing it today. I have something fun to do today, actually. Usually I cover topics of, socio-cultural politics and things of that nature. And we're still kind of doing that today, but we're going to be doing something a little bit different. It's still going to be cultural, it's still going to be sociological, but we're going to be talking games. Specifically, we're talking tabletop games, which is kind of my bread and butter. Not going to say that I'm like the biggest tabletop gamer out there. I don't keep up with all the latest fads and everything, but this is what I do. I'm pretty good at it. I know a lot about it, and so it's what we're talking about today. Specifically, we're going to be talking about diversity in tabletop gaming, because that has been a really hot button issue lately. It's been a really big hot button issue in Dungeons and Dragons, specifically for the last 10 years now? When did 4th edition come out? Because that's when everything really started to change. They tried to change things up a lot with 4th edition, and nobody liked it, so they had to go back, rejigger it, and that's how we got 5th edition. And since then, things have slid downhill quickly. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what they've been doing. We're going to talk about why they've been doing it. We're going to talk about why they didn't actually need to do anything at all. And we're going to go back and discuss exactly how diverse Dungeons & Dragons always was, and I'm going to show you that diversity firsthand. It's going to be great. Because if you're up for the lecture, that's great. And if you just want to listen to the character creation, that's great too. We're going to do both today. But before we get into that, let's take a look at the chat. Hold on, let me get my binoculars out so I can actually read the chat. And I see that PC Unicorn is in the chat. Hello, good to see you here. I never get to see you for lectures, so that's special for me. JP is in the chat. JP, your star changed color. You're a yellow star now. I don't know what that means off the top of my head, but that's something. Blizz is here. Good to see you, Blizz. Glad to have you here too. Okay, and since that is everybody for now, I think we're going to go ahead and get into it. Also, PC Unicorn is a pancake. Not sure exactly how this is significant. However, if you want to play a pancake, this is the right stream to do it on, because we're discussing character creation, and if you want to play a pancake, I will teach you how to play a pancake. This syrup is going to be a feat, though. Okay? Also, JP says D&D is a socioeconomic microcosm. It's always been a diverse environment. It has been, and we're going to discuss that. Before we do that, though, we're going to go through and we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with D&D right now, because Dungeons & Dragons has been kind of sliding downhill so fast it's got splinters in its backside. And as I stated before, for no real reason. And so we're going to start going through some of this stuff and we're going to talk about it. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go all the way back to 4th edition. Now, when it came to 4th edition, we have to understand why they did 4th edition. Dungeons & Dragons, from its inception back in the 1970s under Gary Gygax and his very first books, it was an attempt to create a fantasy world and a war game that could accurately reflect all the physics and mechanics of the real world. So if you wanted to go slay a dragon like you did in fairy tales, He wanted to make a game where you could actually go out and slay that dragon. And he wanted to make it so it wasn't just like, I need to go in there like a video game and just keep pressing the button until the dragon is dead. No, he wanted to make a game where every decision that you made would have some kind of influence on how well you could slay that dragon, and you go from there. To the point where he actually, like, really micromanaged everything. Most people are familiar enough with Dungeons & Dragons right now, and they're familiar with the 3rd edition rules. However, when you go back to the 1st edition, the 1st edition had weird rules that we don't use anymore. Things like dominant hand and non-dominant hand. Things like height and weight actually mattered when it came to things like grappling. Because if your character only has X amount of strength and can only move X amount of weight adequately, then whoever is the heavier person in the grapple would get an advantage. Similarly, whoever was the taller one in a grapple would get an advantage. And there were a lot of very microscopic things that would be taken into account. Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition was a mess. And nobody's going to deny that. First edition was a mess. It was complicated, and it did a good job at what it wanted to do. The problem was it just tracked too many things at once, and so it needed to be streamlined a little bit. Unfortunately, that led us into Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition. And 2nd edition was awful. It was a needed step. When 2nd edition was developed, they changed a lot of things. It introduced the more modern feat system, which is good because we still kind of use that system today. These were just a collection of abilities that you could pick up, and they would simply enhance what you already wanted to do, or they would unlock a new ability for you. And that's great. However, they also introduced things like THAC0. And if you're unfamiliar with THAC0, I'm not going into it. Needless to say, they removed Armor Class and introduced 2-hit Armor Class 0 as a new system. Nobody liked it, and the people that did like it, nobody likes them, and so it was dropped. Which then brings us to Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition, which is what most people are familiar with. This brought in the whole idea of roll your dice, pick your race, pick your class, and everything else is pretty straightforward. If you add on armor, you get a higher AC. If you roll higher stats, you get better bonuses. And everything was really good. Your attributes directly affected your skills. It was very, very straightforward and simple. You had certain skills tied to certain ability scores. Better the ability scores, better your skills. Feats were also simple. They would either give you an ability, or they would amplify an ability that you already had. Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition was fantastic. So fantastic, actually, that it got an upgrade mid-run. Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, which greatly, I want to say, smoothed things out, just a few of the rough edges that it had, and increased the content that Dungeons & Dragons had to play with. And it was so incredibly successful that it spawned an entire new company, Paizo, who were already working on their own tabletop game, saw what was happening with Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 and said, we can do that, and we can do that even better. Which is why, when I'm making modules, I mostly do it for Pathfinder. Because Pathfinder is everything that Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 was, plus so much more. It's kind of ridiculous. And this was the industry standard for a very, very long time. The problem with it, though, was that over time, as it grew, it became somewhat of a monolith. And I don't mean a monolith in necessarily a bad way, but it was just enormous. And so people would look at it, and let's be honest, Dungeons & Dragons is the realm of nerds. And nerds are not exactly the most social people. In fact, they tend to be rather socially inadequate. And so whenever somebody wanted to come and play Dungeons and Dragons, the nerds would say, okay, well, here's a player handbook. You're going to need this. And depending on what race you want to play, here is a primer on the race that you want to play, which is also a book. Once you decide what class you want to play, here is a book on that class and all of the archetypes involved in that class. And if you want to play a magic class, here is a book of spells. This is the Book of Spells 1. This is the Book of Spells 2. This is the Book of Spells 3. This is the Book of Spells 4. So make sure to review those to see if there's anything in there you like. And the end result is that you had this brand new player holding anywhere from 5 to 10 books. And they immediately said, thank you, I'm so excited to play this. And as soon as the nerds turned their back and went back to their game, they dropped that stack of books and was gone before the dust cloud settled. Which brings us to Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition. And Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition sought to streamline that. They said, we need to make this more accessible to everyone, okay? Everybody should be able to play Dungeons & Dragons. It's not even a matter of gatekeeping at this point, but we'll get to gatekeeping later. Understand it, we need to make it easy. And so they did. To a criminal standard. And this is where the conversation is really going to begin. Because when it came to 4th edition, they completely tore down everything that was Dungeons & Dragons and started building from the ground up. They said, instead of having, all of these numbers and grids and everything stating how many attacks that you get per turn, and, what bonuses you get on each individual attack, we're just going to say everybody gets one attack, and we're going to introduce these things called bonus attacks. And instead of having, your low-level spells, your mid-level spells, your high-level spells, all spells are going to be basically kind of just like one level. But we'll have, like, cantrips, and then we'll have, like, standard spells, and then we'll have daily spells, which are really powerful, but you can only use them once per day. If you're a ranger, you still get to have a pet, but at the same time, you also get to, you'll get, like, trick shots and things that you can do. If you're a rogue, if you move into the right position, you can still sneak attack, and so on and so forth. But they essentially just gamified it. There is a reason why, if you're interested in playing a Dungeons & Dragons video game, and you don't want to do Baldur's Gate, there is... from, I don't even know who it is. Is it Cryptic anymore? Is it Gearbox? I don't remember who has control of it anymore. But you can play Neverwinter online, which is based on the Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition. The reason it's based on that, however, is because essentially they tried to turn Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition into a video game, which is why it translated really well to a video game. Left click is your basic attack, whether that's swinging a sword, shooting an arrow, or firing off a spell. Right click is your special ability, whether that's a more powerful feat, or a trick shot, or a more powerful spell. And if you press the middle button, I think it was, you get to cast your big move, whether that's like a critical hit, or a barrage, or your daily spell, whatever it happens to be. They essentially turned it into a video game, and in doing so, they pissed a lot of people off because nobody wants to do that. Okay, very few people want to do that. There were a few out there that did. However, one of the things that they did, and this was one of the significant things that turned a lot of people off when 4th edition came out, is they decided that they had to simplify everything, and they started by simplifying alignments. So, if you're at all familiar with Dungeons & Dragons, and let me go ahead and pull this thing up. I'm gonna pull something up here. So, alignments. If you're at all familiar with Dungeons & Dragons, you know what the alignments are. So, there's good versus evil, there's law versus chaos, and right here we can see our alignments. So, we have lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good, lawful neutral, true neutral, chaotic neutral, lawful evil, neutral evil, chaotic evil. This has been the way that Dungeons & Dragons has run since basically forever, until, just very recently. Actually, it's not even very recently. That's been the thing for like 10 years now, if not better. But the idea was this. Lawful stipulates how much of an adherent you are to the laws of society. Not just the laws written on the book, but laws, customs, traditions. It's essentially, are you a social person or are you not a social person? If you're there for society, you're probably lawful. If you are the outcast of society, you're probably chaotic. Okay? So if you obey laws, you're obviously lawful. However, if you're also the kind of person who shows up to your job on time, if you keep your promises, if you pay your taxes, if you do any of these things, you're probably a lawful person. If you do not keep your promises, if you show up places whenever you want, if you don't adhere to a schedule, you're chaotic. Similarly, good versus evil. There are long discussions that we can have on good versus evil, but good versus evil was essentially, are you a selfless person or are you a selfish person? The good person will go out of their way, sometimes to a pathological degree, to help other people. They are the ones who... A really good example of this is if you've ever read the Injustice comics. There is a scene that I remember sticking out to me where Batman and his son Damian are just getting to know each other. And so one of the things that Batman does is he goes out at night for his nightly patrols. He drops his son Damian, who is the current Robin, out in the middle of Gotham and tells him to find his own way home. Now keep in mind that Damian was raised by the League of Shadows. He is a proficient survivalist, he's a proficient combatant. There is literally nothing that can really hurt him. Okay? He's Batman's son. What's significant about that is the fact that it takes Damian all night to get home. And the reason being is because along the way, he stops to help every single person that he finds. He stops a mugging. He helps a woman get home. He finds a cat and he has to find the owner for it. Every single little thing that he can do, he does. And so it takes him almost 12 hours to get home in the middle, or from inside of Gotham. Because Wayne Manor is like just outside of Gotham. And when he gets home, Alfred, of course, greets him at the door. Damian, of course, is in a very sour mood. And Alfred compliments him on his fantastic time. Bruce had done the same thing when he was first starting out as Batman, and it took him 3 days to get home. That is good to a pathological degree. Evil, of course, is not that hard to figure out, being the opposite. Evil is all about selfish. What is going to help me right now? Don't care who it hurts, don't care where it comes from. What is going to help me? And so when you do this and you put these together, you have lawful evil, where I am going to obey all of the laws, but I'm going to use all of the laws to benefit myself. I don't care who it hurts in the process. For example, see basically every politician ever. At the same time, you have chaotic good, which is also kind of the Batman archetype. Don't care about the laws, don't care about, whatever I have to do. I'm going to help people, and to hell with anything that gets in my way. It was because of these crisscrossed alignments that you could make a variety of different characters. 4th edition decided, however, that was too complicated. And so, 4th edition did away with neutral. which is to say that 4th edition got rid of neutral good. I can't highlight more than one at one time. Oh, maybe I can if I'm holding the right key down. They got rid of neutral good. No, I still can't highlight more than one. Lawful neutral, chaotic neutral, and neutral evil, because they said those are just too complicated. Nobody understands those. And so they got rid of them. They reduced the 9 alignments into 5. You're either Goody Two-Shoes, Evil Mick Eats Babies, Robin Hood, or the Dictator. Without a whole lot of wiggle room in between. So, that was the beginning of the down spiral. And that, of course, has been stepped up because that was how they reduced it before. And now, we're simply getting rid of we're getting rid of alignments in general. Now, this is not specific to your player characters. This is about creatures. However, when this came out, they said that it was wrong for us to pigeonhole certain races into certain alignments. For example, why does a goblin have to be chaotic? Why do demons have to be evil? Why do angels have to be good? After all, good angels, evil demons, has nobody played Diablo? Because in Diablo, everybody's evil. I think. I don't know. I only played Diablo 3, and I gotta admit, the story is really hard to follow. I get the feeling that nobody actually plays Diablo for the story. Because I don't think they put a lot of effort into it. Anyway, though, they decided that, racial alignments are now problematic. And so they're doing away with racial alignments. Now, any monster can be any alignment at all. Doesn't matter. But they left characters alone for a while, and then they decided that character alignments were going to go away too. They were instead going to do away with the idea of you being good, evil, lawful, chaotic. And we're just going to have like a devotion system, where we'll have a system of qualifiers, and you can scale yourself on like 1 to 5 on how you feel about a particular thing. Which not only is that more complicated than what we had before, but it's also kind of pointless. After all, if you cast Detect Evil, it doesn't really detect how or what your opinion on freedom is. So I don't know what they're doing there. So we had alignments. Alignments are too complicated. We're not doing alignments anymore. And it just kept going even further, particularly with 5th edition, because with 5th edition they have gone the full diversity route and said that everything in the game is problematic, everything has to go away. And so the next thing they did is they said, you know what? All of these races in the book, we've got like elves and orcs and dwarves and everything else, they have these like numbers next to them with a little minus symbol. And as it turns out, people are offended by that because there's like the orcs and they have a minus in front of their intelligence, and that makes them stupid. And we can't have that because that's racist. They don't actually explain why that's racist, but they said it was, and so that makes it racist. And these elves, I mean, the elves, they have a minus in front of their constitution. Is there a reason why we can't why we can't have constitution elves? What's up with that? What's up with that? And so it went on and on because everything was now problematic. And this was done because they fundamentally do not understand what the ability scores mean. To that, I'm going to go ahead and pull up a couple of examples. So we're going to go into races, and we're going to look at some of these. Let's take a look at elves. Now, granted, we're just going to look at high elves because I'm not going into all the different elves. Well, actually, maybe we can. I can get all my examples in one place. So, we all know what elves are. We all know where elves come from. and we're going to look at their ability scores. So here's our standard racial traits. So if you're an elf, elves are regarded as nimble both in body and mind, but their form is frail. Elves naturally gain a +2 in dexterity, a +2 to intelligence, and a -2 to constitution. Now, if you take a look at this, you're going to say a -2 to constitution. They're frail? Well, why does an elf have to be frail? Except that's not what it's saying. See, what this means, and we're going to get into this later, is when you roll the die, well, when you roll your dice, actually, because there's several of them, and like I said, we're going to get into it. When you roll your dice, the way you're supposed to roll your dice, according to the book, is you roll 4 d6s, and you keep the highest 3. This means that, technically speaking, the lowest roll you could have is a 3. It's if you roll 3 ones in a row. Okay? Well, actually, technically, you'd have to roll 4 ones because you get to keep the 3 highest. So that 4th one would also have to be a 1, otherwise it would swap in for one of your other dice. So the only way to get a 3 would be to roll 4 ones. And I don't know what the odds of doing that are, but they ain't great. The theoretical, well, not even theoretical, the highest that you can roll would be 3 6s and 18. So why does this matter? People look at the plus and the minus and they assume that this applies to the top and the bottom of the spectrum. And that's not the way that it works. It's the way that it can work if you play it that way, and it's possible to do so. If you roll for your constitution and you roll a 10 or less, your -2 constitution will apply and you will have a negative penalty in your constitution. As a matter of fact, I have a player in my current Star Trek game who has that. They have a negative modifier in one of their skills because they put their lowest score there, they took a penalty on that score, and now they have a negative modifier. But that's not the way that it works. The way this works is actually the negative score caps how high that score can go. It's not about pushing an elf down to an 8 in Constitution. It's about taking their 18s and knocking them down to a 16. So that an elf can only go up so high. Now keep in mind that a 16 in Constitution, if you're unfamiliar, is pretty good actually. A 16 is a +3 modifier on your rolls, and a +3 is kind of a big deal. It's not about pushing the low down, it's about pushing the high down. Similarly, when they say that you get a plus in something, that means that you're not allowed to go down below, generally speaking, a 12. Most DMs play by the rules that you're not allowed to roll a stat lower than an 8, or lower than a 10. Which means that by default, if you put your lowest stat into dexterity or intelligence, if you're an elf, then you will automatically go up to a 12. You are not allowed to be less dexterous or dumber than a 12. And these are the points. They are making the races special by saying that while you cannot exceed this certain ceiling without, special training, you also cannot go down below a certain floor. Now, there are other, there's other elves, and I wonder if I can find them. They should be, yeah, here we go, racial subtypes. Let's see. Arctic elves, they do not get any different stats. Neither do the rest of these, apparently. Okay, that's fine. So, it's not about knocking your low scores down, it's about knocking the high scores down. It's not about, kicking your high scores up even higher. It's about lifting up your low scores. And that's what they do. Elves are nimble by default. It's just what they are. Dwarves, let me grab a dwarf here. Dwarves are a shorter, hardy people. And so, dwarves naturally get a +2 to Constitution because they're tough. They get a +2 to Wisdom because, well, if you live your entire time underground, it's good to know where not to dig. They get a -2 to Charisma because, let's face it, nobody likes dwarves. That means that the highest a dwarf can go in Charisma is a 16. The lowest they can go in Constitution and Wisdom is a 12. Again, it's about leveling out the high scores and raising up the low scores. So this idea that we need to begin removing these negatives is wrong. Especially since they called it racist when it dealt with orcs. And so we're going to look at the half-orc, and we'll get to the half part of that later. So half-orcs, of course, are the union between an orc and a human, and the less said about that, the better. But half-orcs, if we find our stats here, oh, these apparently only, or they get a +2 bonus to any one ability score of their choice. Cool, awesome. So, I mean, that's great for them. I thought that, you know what, I'm going to have to look up the full orc then. Let's go back. Orc, here we go. Boom, got it. All right, orc. It's still a standard race, so there's no level adjustment here. But here we go. Ability scores for an orc. So for orcs, you're going to get a +4 strength. Now keep in mind, orcs are strong. This means that if you want to play an orc, a full-blooded orc, if you roll a 10 in your strength, it's automatically going up to a 14. Okay? You cannot have less than a 14 in strength, which is great. Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma, all of your soft stats are going to take a penalty. However, does this mean that orcs are dumb? Does this mean that orcs eat rocks? Does this mean that they're not personable? No. It means they're generally not. This means, however, that you could have an orc with a 16 in intelligence. What does that mean? Let's think about that. What does a 16 in intelligence mean? I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this, and I'm going to show just what that means. We're going to go to ability scores. So, orcs are stupid, right? I mean, they're orcs. They're big, they're dumb, they're nasty. Orcs are stupid. Charisma, Wisdom, here we go. Intelligence. So, first off, intelligence determines how well your character learns and what reasons. It's good for wizards, obviously. The number of bonus languages your character knows at the start of the game is tied to your intelligence. So everybody gets to start off with common and whatever their racial languages are. So if you're an elf, you automatically start off with common and elvish. Elven, I never remember. However, whatever your bonus in intelligence is, you get one additional language for every bonus point. That means that if you were playing an orc and you rolled an 18 for your intelligence, you take a -2 penalty on that, which kicks you down to a 16. However, because that is still a 16, you get to start off knowing 3 additional languages. And I need you to stop and consider that. That is common. That is orcish. So, common is essentially English or whatever language that you happen to be playing in, wherever you happen to be. If you're playing in China, you're speaking, or common is Chinese. If you're playing in Spain, common is Spanish, but you get the idea. So, you get to speak English and orcish, and then 3 additional languages. That is 5 languages. How many people do you know that can speak 5 languages? How many people do you know that can speak 2? Can you speak 2? This idea that orcs are stupid is also stupid. Orcs have never been these brainless brutes. And the only time they've ever been brainless brutes has been when DMs have played them as such. This is not a fault of the game. The game is not the problem. The problem is how people were playing them, how people were treating the orcs. And you can't change that by changing the game. The only thing that was served by removing the minus penalties on races is now your orcs can learn a 6th language. It's not the big bonus that you think it is. It also increases your number of skill points, it increases your appraise, crafting, your knowledge, linguistics, and spellcraft checks. Oh, by the way, you are only allowed to learn spells up to your intelligence score. That means that if you had an orc, and you want to play a wizard orc with 16, they can learn up to level 6 spells. And seeing as how level 6 spells can literally rend the sky in half and rain down fire upon a city, yeah, I think that your orc is pretty smart. And if we look at this, so 10 to 11 is your standard, okay? So this is basically your humans, okay? This is your even keel. Bugbears, which are neither bugs nor bears, they're actually part of the goblin family. Wights, which are kind of ghostly things. I don't want to get into those. Night hags, things like that. That's your average. 12 to 13. Somebody who learns quickly and easily. They know more than is necessary. They're fairly logical, okay? So this is your person who's a little bit above average. 14 to 15. So this person can solve most problems without even trying. Able to do math or solve logic puzzles mentally with reasonable accuracy. Alright, that's pretty smart there. And guess what? We haven't hit 16 yet. Remember, highest the orc can go is 16. So 16, noticeably above the norm, fairly intelligent, able to understand new tasks quickly. Basically, show them something once and they can do it. They're also probably well read. They're probably capable of holding deep philosophical conversations. We're talking a really smart person here because the only thing higher than that is 18, and that's genius level. So this idea that we have to remove negative modifiers because making orcs stupid is racist is actually racist towards the orcs. The same thing is true about calling elves frail. Remember, elves take a -2 penalty to Constitution. Constitution is right here. This affects primarily your hit points and your fortitude. But if we look at this, elves cap out at 16. And at 16, they can easily shrug off most illnesses. They just don't get sick. At 14, they're able to work for 12 hours a day, most days. No big deal. They can just keep on going. I mean, all of this, an elf is fully capable of. They didn't need to have the negative penalty removed. They were already capable of being plenty tough. It's just that most of them weren't. And that was the point. It was a generalization. And there was nothing wrong with it. And so, nothing about this was needed. This was simply virtue signaling to the highest degree. They created their own problem so that they could solve their own problem. Which is why we need to get into the next subject, and it's going to be about orcs again. And I promise this is the last thing, then we're going to get into building characters. Also, I see that Jeffrey's in here. Let's check the chat real quick, because I've been kind of ignoring it. Not intentionally, but it happened. Let's see. Earlier, JP says, I'm convinced that Wizards of the Coast had a DEI hire that was responsible for the changes. Yeah, and that DEI hire was probably in HR, which is why everything else followed suit. JP says back when alignment mattered. It still does in my games. It still does for me. Thaco is a 4-letter word. Technically, that's right because the last character is a number. PC Unicorn says if you lose a skill, does that mean you're defeated? No. Defeated is what happens when you roll, or I roll a critical hit and you roll a critical fail. Then we get to roll on the maiming and dismemberment chart. Let's see. PC Unicorn says, what about TARs, though? Good question. The thing is, TARs are a custom race. You can generally start with a centaur, and then you can customize it from there. For example, if I wanted to make a cat tar, for example, that would be easy. Because I have... Where is it? I have stats for... At least I thought I did. Hold on. Let me go back a couple times. Nope, not there. Not there. Not there. Here we go. Here. Centaur. I know that I have stats for a centaur. Where the hell is it? Do I not? How do I not? Yeah, Duergar, Gripply, Hobgoblin, Orc. I guess I don't. I would have swore that there was one in here. Driders. We have Driders, but not Centaurs? How is that? Changelings, Kitsune, Nagaji. Wow. They really did not put a Centaur in here. Well, it's fine. I can always go to the Bestiary. But I can go to the Bestiary, I can pick up a Centaur, I can also take the Catfolk, and we can mix and match different traits. And we can make one that way. Let's see. Where was I? Did I get lost? No, I did not get lost. JP says, who else had the library of compendiums on the top shelf in high school? I don't know that my high school had any gaming books, honestly. And I wasn't into gaming at the time, so I never looked. JP says, I'm imagining gaining larger feats as you level, like Mr. Potato Head prosthetics. Just pop on the larger sized foot. Magic is stored in the toes. I mean, it kind of works like that. And Blizz says, and fighting feats are stored in the arms. No, fighting feats are stored in the feet. It's called mixed martial arts. Let's see. Unicorn says in a Zap Brannigan voice, what makes a man neutral? Well, obviously Wizard of the Coast doesn't know, because they removed that. Unicorn also said because they live too long and will waffle forever and sign of the document. Oh, that must be elves, because elves do live forever, and nobody likes them. JP says, I want to play a high elf and then portray a stoner elf. I'd make peace with the dwarves. You can do that. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's see. What else? No, we like dwarves? No, we don't. Nobody likes dwarves. Human accepted snoo? No. No, they usually don't. Let's see. Unicorn says, make a character that only speaks Old English, make its primary language uncommon. Yes! Yes, we can do that. Jeffrey entered the chat. Hello, Jeffrey. Good to see you. Again. Alright, and I think that's caught up on all the chats. Alright. So we discussed how negative score penalties are actually a strike against the races themselves because it is essentially stripping them of their general identity and just kind of making everybody the same, which is why we are going to go to this one. So this just recently came out, and it's because Wizards of the Coast wants to rebrand the very idea of orcs. It came out a while ago, and I didn't pull this one up. The reason why orcs had to have their negative penalties to intelligence removed is because somebody once compared them, and they wrote up an article just like this on a trash website just like this, and they compared orcs to black people. It was one of those things that everybody read at the time, and everybody said, this is absolutely stupid. No, they're not. There is nobody out there comparing black people to orcs. But it didn't matter because somebody got offended and then we had to do something about it. Now, to even further differentiate them and move them away, they have decided they're going to transform the entire race of orcs into some kind of nomadic, plains-living people. And so they have dressed them in bright colors and ponchos and wide-brimmed hats and everything else, and everybody came out and said, all right, so orcs are not black people anymore. Orcs are now Mexicans. How is this better? To which the short answer is, it's not. It is actually just as bad, just in a different way now, with the exception being that nobody was actually comparing orcs to black people before, and now whoever did this artwork is actively comparing orcs to Mexicans, so it actually is kinda worse. And Jeffrey says, that ain't my orcs. Where is war? I think you misspelled war. Okay? It's pronounced war. I don't have a great war. Either way. You got the wrong orcs here, okay? Your orcs are a lot bigger. So anyway, we have this now because they have to fix it. They are literally in search of a problem, trying to fix the problem. The reason being is because everything is problematic. We've heard this before. Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out. These are people literally in search of a problem so that they can solve it. This is a problem that we've seen a lot nowadays. Everybody has what I would love to call main character syndrome. When you watch a television show, when you watch a cartoon, a movie, whatever, it follows a single character, the main character. And that is the character who finds all the problems, they have all the solutions, they get to be the hero in the end. And everybody seems to be under this delusion that you are the main character of the world. Except you're not. And sometimes when you go looking for a problem, you actually create the problem. Which is what we've been seeing a lot, not just in tabletop gaming, but in everything. People are desperate for problems to solve. And so they are creating the problems, not unlike a fireman who is so in love with the adulation that they get for being a hero that they start setting fires just so they can put them out and save people. It is a psychological sickness, and it is one that is spreading. Unicorn says, looks like the art that came from the last Magic set. It did not come from the last Magic set, but I think it might be similar. It might even be the same artist. I'm not positive, because they pulled in a special artist to do this. And JP says, the attire makes sense for the setting and environment, simple explanation. This is true. And if that is all that it was, there wouldn't really be a problem. The problem is that orcs have generally never been terribly nomadic. They do move, but they're not nomads. They don't travel, they spread. They have an area, they control it, and then, when they need to, they spread to another area and either take the resources or take the territory. They don't travel that way. And orcs are not necessarily really limited to any one area either. You can have orcs in pretty much every biome. To that end, there's no reason you couldn't have orcs in a steppes area. However, orcs are, generally speaking, more tribalistic. They would not be wearing this. Now, it's not to say that they couldn't. You could have that very special sect of orcs who are maybe a cut above the others. And if that was all it was, that's fine. But when you're trying to rebrand the entire race as this, then we have a problem. But I don't want to spend too much time on that. I just wanted to touch on this because these are changes they've been making to the game because they're trying to fix the game. They're trying to make the game more diverse. They're trying to make the game less problematic when it didn't need to be. And so I'm going to move on from this, and I want to start talking about how Dungeons & Dragons has always been a diverse game, and how character creation used to work. And before we get into that, we have to talk about character creation itself. PC Unicorn says, a unique group of generally peaceful orcs settled down in the desert. You know what? That could actually be your player party. I mean, we have, looking here, 1, 2... If we're going to exclude the kids, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think. I've had parties of 6. This could be an actual player party. Everybody decided they wanted to play orcs. They decided they want to be adventuring through the desert, and so they're dressing as the desert people would. I mean, that's a great explanation right there. Just not for the entire race. They decried painting the race with a broad brush, only to paint them with another broad brush. Nothing has been solved here. But anyway, that is actually a really good segue, because when we're talking about making characters, I want to talk about how people do their characters wrong. And when I say wrong, I mean it in a very minor way. I want to introduce you to a channel. This is called Tulok the Barbarian. Now, he is actually a really good guy. I don't agree with him on everything, but he did a very long-running series, and when I say long-running, I mean he made like 400 of these. He did a series called Building Character. And the idea was simple. He would build characters that you could play in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. And I'm not going to go through the list extensively, but we've got Captain America, Aqua, I don't know who that is, Batman, how to play Link, how to play Iron Man, how to play Riku from Kingdom Hearts. If I scroll down a bit, we've got how to play Dante, how to play the Bride, how to play Jotaro Kujo, how to play Crom? I don't know, I didn't play Fire Emblem. How to play Luke Skywalker, how to play Storm, and if we go down to the bottom of it, well, not the bottom, but we'll grab some more. How to play Cyborg, Daredevil, Alphonse Elric, now Fumi, Rising of the Shield, I don't even know what that is. How to play Sykes, that's Kingdom Hearts, how to play Adora. But basically, if you wanted to play as one of these characters, he goes through and builds a level 20 character. This is complete with the race that you'll play, the classes, because almost every single one of them is multi-class to some degree, the spells you'll need, the feats you'll need, everything you'll need to make that character, and then he'll judge how viable that character is, and most of them are pretty darn viable. And so, this is how most people go about character creation. They'll say, you know what? I want to play a character. For example, I want to play an elvish archer and I want to specialize as a sniper. So I'm going to make an elvish sniper. I'm going to need great dexterity. I'm going to need to have all kinds of feats. I'm going to play as a rogue, and a rogue archetype at that, so that I can get myself some long-range critical hits. And I'm going to be awesome. I'll be able to sit over here with my bow and just plink at people, getting critical hits, you know, without them being able to actually touch me. Okay, it's going to be great, right? And that's fine. That's how most people approach making a character. You have an idea for a character in mind, and then you set out on a way to build that character. There is absolutely nothing wrong with how to do that. Okay? This is how everyone does it. And there's a reason for that. If you're going to play a character, you might want to actually, you know, like the character that you're creating. This is not the way that it was done traditionally, though. And this is where we're going to go through, and we're actually going to show how characters were built before, and how Dungeons & Dragons has always been one of the most diverse games in existence. So let's go ahead and start making some characters, okay? I'm going to need some dice. Go ahead and bring that up over there. And we're going to need some space here. So I'm going to send this away, because we're not going to need that. Let's go ahead and make some characters. Now, traditionally speaking, when you rolled your when you made a character, you do so in a certain number of steps. Those steps are: you first roll your ability scores. After you've rolled your ability scores, you then choose the race that you want to play. And after you've chosen your race, you choose what class that you want to play. And if you've noticed, that means that you essentially do not have a terrible amount of control over what kind of character it's going to be. This is both a good and a bad thing. One of my mantras in my games is that adversity breeds growth. By putting you into a situation that you are uncomfortable with and having you solve that situation, you will figure out new tactics, you will discover new abilities, you will learn new teamwork, and you will grow not just as a character, but as a person, as a player. I can take a brand new player and give them a level 20 character, and they will fail. I can take a veteran, give them a level 5 character, and they will succeed. The reason being is experience. Not just numbers on a page, but real experience. And that experience only comes from trying new things. So let's go ahead and demonstrate this. Now, I'm going to try and do this as legitimately as possible. However, sometimes rolls don't necessarily work out in your favor. And I've got some blank character sheets here. Your character sheets will never look like this. This is my own proprietary design for these sheets. You are welcome to copy it if you want. But these are my quick reference sheets. This is what I use for my players. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start rolling some dice. And we're going to do this the old-fashioned way. We're going to go roll 4d6, and I'm going to go ahead and sort them so that they go from highest to lowest. Or lowest to highest. Either way. Alright, so we have rolled 4d6. We rolled a 1, 2 2s, and a 4. That means that our first stat is not great, and our first stat is going to be an 8. And what we're going to do is we're going to assign these as we go. So strength is going to be an 8. And then we're going to repeat that process. We'll do it again. 4 and 4 and 5 is going to be 13. For Constitution, 4 4 4 is a 12. For Intelligence, it's 14 minus 1 essentially, so that's going to be 13. For Wisdom, 15 minus 2 is 13. And for Charisma, 16 minus 3 is 13. Alright, so we take a look at our character, and we've got some pretty middling stats here. And so the question now is, what do we want to do with these? So with a 12-13, we've got a +1 in basically everything. We're not necessarily good at anything, we're not necessarily bad at anything, and this means that we're a blank canvas. We can do whatever we want. The only problem is that strength. Now, what do we want to do? We probably will want to find some kind of race that will give us a bonus on our strength. So let's look at our options. And for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to stick to just the basic races. So, core races: dwarf, elf, gnome, half-elf, half-orc, halfling, human. So dwarves, we already looked at those. They get a bonus to Constitution and Wisdom, not Strength. So they're out. Elves also do not get a bonus to Strength. What about gnomes? What do gnomes get? Well, gnomes are small, so they probably do not get a bonus to Strength. Nope. They get a +2 to Constitution, Charisma, and a -2 to Strength. So we're not taking a gnome. We want a bonus to Strength. Halflings. So halfling stats, they get a +2 to Dexterity and Charisma, but also a -2 to Strength because they're small, so we're not taking that. That basically leaves the half-orc and the human. Now, both of them get a similar adjustment. Both of them are going to get a +2 to whatever stat they want. So if we're going to go with a variety character, why don't we go with human? It may sound boring, but humans are actually great characters. So with the ability score modifiers, a human character is going to get a +2 racial bonus in one ability score of their choice at creation to represent their varied nature. So by simply coming up here and saying race, human, we get a +2 in any one. We can go ahead and put it into strength, and that will bring our strength up to a 10. Now, 10 isn't great. However, it means that we no longer take a penalty there. It's still our weakest stat, though. Now, the next question is, what kind of class do we want to play? So let's look at what we're good at. We are not good at strength. So we probably want to steer away from, say, fighter, barbarian, monk, things of that nature. Because we're not really going to be punching and whacking things a whole lot. With some decent dexterity, we could shoot things, though. So, while we're 1 point away from having a +2, this opens up things like Ranger and Rogue that we could potentially be good at. Constitution isn't great, so I would probably stay away from anything Constitution-based. Again, no Barbarian. Our intelligence is decent, so that opens up things like Wizard. Wizard, Rogue, also good. With a 13 in Wisdom, that opens up things like Druid and Cleric. And with Charisma, that opens up Paladin and Bard. We have our choices. So, I mean, what do you think we should do? If you were making this character, which one would you take? What would you prioritize? Because we do have options. I don't know what I would do with this one, because this one is a pretty blank slate. I wasn't expecting that at first. I'll go ahead and put a break here for when we go to start the new one. While you consider what you'd want to do with this one, why don't we roll some more stats? Oh, and Blizz says Bard. You know what? I'm good with that one, actually. We can go Bard. We have a 13 in Charisma. Alright. Because we're human, we're going to go ahead and we're going to be medium. Our alignment, we'll get to that in a second. Class, we're going to go ahead and say Bard 1. Experience is 0. if we're going to go ahead and take Bard, let's go ahead and look at that. So making a Bard, we'll take this. Bards have a D8, and by default, you always get your maximum hit dice at the first level. So maximum HP is going to be 8 plus our Constitution, which is plus 1. So we'll get 9. Oh, and if you look at some of these and you don't know where they're from, this is because this is my universal list. Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder don't have stamina points, don't have resolve points, but Starfinder does. So this is my universal character sheet. It works for everything. Alright. Also, armor class. Because we do have a 13 in dexterity, that means we automatically get a +1. That's going to make our armor class 11. Our fortitude, we have a +1, so it's always automatically a +1 there. Reflex is a +1 from our 13 in dexterity, and will is a +1 for our 13 in wisdom. Our passive perception is also going to be an 11 because of our wisdom. That fills in a few of those. Also, we move 30 feet. Now, as a bard, we get access to a whole bunch of skills here. And I'm not going to go into skills because we don't really need to right now. We do not get any kind of base attack bonus. We do not get a fortitude save, but we do get a +2 to our reflex and will. So that'll be +3 and +3. And that's pretty much all we need. As far as racial traits go, for human, we mostly just get a bonus feat and skilled. Yeah. So we get a bonus feat, whatever that happens to be, and it'll probably be something bard related. And then skilled, which gives us an additional skill point every time we level up. In addition, let's see what we get. So with Pathfinder, there are favored class options, and humans are favored for pretty much every class. For a bard, we get to add 1 spell known to the bard's spell list, and it must be at least 1 level below the highest you can cast. So since bards can cast level 1 spells, I guess that means they get a cantrip. Racial subtypes, no. Favorite class, no. And then racial archetypes, and then racial feats. So since we get a bonus feat, it's always nice to look at the things that only your race can learn. And given that we are going to be playing a bard, why don't we try Heroic Will? It requires you to have Iron Will and a base will save of 4. So we can't take that one. What else? How about Bestow Luck? That requires Defiant Luck and Explicable Luck, and that you be human, so we can't do that one. Dauntless Destiny requires a Charisma of 13, which we have. Fearless Curiosity and Intimidated 10 ranks. No, we can't do that one. Why are these so high level? How about Improvisation? Requires Fast Learner. You know what? We can do that, I think. Yep, we can absolutely do that. We can do that, because it does require an intelligence of 13, and we have that. So you gain a +2 bonus on all skill checks for skills you have no ranks in. Furthermore, you can use all skills designated as trained only, untrained. So what we'll do is, for our bonus feat, we'll take Fast Learner, which I mean as a bard. That helps. And since at level 1 we do get to have a feat, we can then take Improvisation. And just like that, we're almost done. Now, of course, we need to have the rest of our stuff here. So as a bard, we're going to get bardic knowledge, bardic performance. We're going to go ahead and get cantrips and countersong. We will get distraction, fascinate. And inspire courage 1. And we'll go ahead and just change that to black, because that's not a feat. There we go. And there we go. We have a character. Now, is it the best character in the world? No. Is it optimized in any way? It is not. However, if you did not see yourself playing a human bard before, well, now you're up for you're getting a new experience. Is it great? It could be, with a little bit of time and effort. Keep in mind that every 4 levels you will gain an ability point. And so any of these 13s can be upgraded to a 14. At level 4, you could easily throw that additional point into your charisma and make that a 14, which increases your charisma bonus to a 2, which is going to increase the bonus for all of your bardic abilities. It's a new experience. And then we can get into the actual character description, because this is just the numbers. When we get into the actual character description, we get to pick your alignment. And bards can be anything that they want to be. You can be lawful, you can be chaotic, you can be good, you can be evil. Doesn't matter. Carrying capacity, it's fine. Movement. Vital statistics. And here's where the real diversity comes in. So first off, age. You're allowed to be whatever age you want. However, if you play older or younger characters, that may change your stats a little bit. Most people play their characters in the prime of their lives. However, middle-aged characters take a -1 penalty to strength, dex, and constitution. They also get a +1 to intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. When they become old, the penalty becomes a -2, venerable it becomes a +3, and eventually your character will die. It's unfortunate, but everyone does. But you can make yourself however big you want. Height and weight, if you want to roll it randomly, this is how you would do it. And then, you're allowed to simply go ahead and describe your character. Your character's ethnicity can be whatever you want it to be. Would you like them to be European, Middle Eastern, Pan-Asian, Pacific Islander, Arctic, like the Inuit? You can make your character into whatever. If you want your character to hail from the very hottest core of the Sahara, you can do that. The numbers don't need to change for that. You can make your character whatever you want it to be. Similarly, we turned our character into a bard because our stats fit the bard better. But if you wanted to play a fighter, there is nothing stopping you from playing a fighter. Even if you do not have the greatest strength, it can still be done. You do not necessarily have to do what your stats tell you. They're simply a guideline. Maybe you don't want to play a bard. Maybe you hate playing bards. You don't want to play a charisma-based character. You want to grab a great big weapon, and you want to play this human as a fighter. And it occurs to me you can't actually see this. Let me turn this off. Why didn't you say something? There we go. Okay, now you can see the character we just made. So, you have the character here. Let's say that you wanted to play as a fighter. Okay, that's fine. You don't have great strength. However, if you know how to play the game, and this is where experience comes in, there are dexterity-based fighters. We can go ahead and make this character a fighter. So, Fighter 1, okay? And we'll just go through and blank out a few of these. It's going to be a 1, a 1, and a 1. That doesn't change. We'll take a bonus feat, and we'll go ahead and clear these out. So let's go ahead and make this character fighter. Even though it's not the most optimal thing, we can do it. Let's take a look at fighters. So first off, as a human, you get... Well, as a level 1 character, you get a feat. Okay? As a human, you get a bonus feat. And as a fighter, you get an additional bonus feat. That's 3 feats at level 1 if you take the prototypical human fighter. They call it the most boring character only, or ever. But that is so far from the truth. So they get a D10, which means that we're going to come up here and we're going to say max HP will be 11. Armor class, because we're not really wearing anything, is still going to be 11. Fighters get just a fortitude save, but they do get a base attack bonus, so that's nice. So our fortitude save is going to be a +3. Now, we don't have great strength. So we're not going to go, or we're not going to stab anything terribly hard. We do have really good dexterity, though. And so there is something we can do with this. And that is, we're going to look at feats, which I know is going to make somebody very happy. We're going to look at combat feats. And we're going to look at weapon finesse. So, the benefit here is, if you have a light weapon, an elven curve blade, a rapier, whip, or spiked chain made for a creature of your size category, you may use your dexterity modifier instead of your strength modifier on attack rolls. If you carry a shield, the armor check penalty applies to your attack rolls. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and... Oh yes, I am still on the character stats screen. Hold on. Calling me on my shit. Good job, okay? Good job. Proud of you. You're keeping me on my toes. So we got weapon finesse. Now, we can grab this whenever we want. So we can go ahead and say weapon finesse. Well, we get a feat at level 1. However, as a fighter, we get a bonus feat. We only get a small pool of bonus feats to draw from. Let's see, at first level and every level, or every even level thereafter, you get a bonus feat. These bonus feats must be selected from those listed as combat feats, also sometimes called fighter bonus feats. Which, I mean, is where we were. We just did that. So guess what? Our level 1 bonus feat is going to be weapon finesse. So down here, weapon finesse. That means that instead of getting a +0 from our strength, we're going to get a +1 on all of our attack rolls from our dexterity. And now we can go through and try to make it better. So weapon finesse is a prerequisite for other things. Let's see if there's any that we can actually take. Dance of Chains, no, we're not going to get that yet. Dervish Dance, we're not going to get that yet either. Dueling Mastery, no. Fencing Grace. Now, here's something we might be able to do. So with Fencing Grace, we get to use our dexterity on rapier damage rolls. So normally when you stab somebody, you get to use you use your strength on your attack roll, and you use your strength modifier on your damage roll. Well, we don't have any strength, so we're gonna say we're gonna go and grab weapon focus. Can we? It does require that we're proficient with a selected weapon. We are, because we're a fighter. A base attack bonus of 1. We have it because we're a fighter. As a benefit, you get a +1 bonus on all attack rolls you make using your selected weapon. So, that's what we're going to do. For our bonus feat up here, we'll go ahead and take weapon focus, rapier, and since that's our level 1 feat and our bonus feat for a human, we'll come down here and grab our bonus feat for fighter, and we will make this... Where was it? Ah, Fencing Grace. Requires Dex 13. We have it. Weapon Finesse. We have it. Weapon Focus Rapier. We have it. So we'll go with Fencing Grace. And just like that, we have turned our human with substandard strength into a perfectly capable duelist. And a pretty good one at that. I would want to play this character. This would be a fun character to play. We managed to take the stats that we had and even capitalize on the stat that we were bad in by using feats to adjust it. And so now, like I said, it's good. So why don't we try a different character? Alright, let's try something new. Let's go ahead and roll some more dice. Oh, and PC Unicorn says, I choose the latter as my proficient weapon. Yes, I heard about that. It was funny. I'm not retelling the story, but it was funny. Alright, let's go. So, this character is getting a 16. Well, 16, but minus 3, so it's going to be a 13. We do it again for dexterity. That's going to be a 12. And you'll notice that your stats usually tend to be more middling when you do it this way. The next character I do, I'll show my personal method. It tends to give better stats. Constitution is going to be a 10. Intelligence is 19 minus 3. It's going to be 16. Wisdom, 16 minus 2 is going to be 14. And 10 minus 1 is going to be 9. Alright. I need a drink real quick. Hold on. Okay, very good. Refreshed and ready to go. So let's look at our stats here. We have pretty terrible charisma and pretty terrible constitution. So neither of those are doing us any favors. We have great intelligence. And so we can either capitalize on that or we can penalize that and use that as kind of our dump stat. But let's say we want to go ahead and capitalize that. So this is our numbers that we've got. And you always roll them in order traditionally. If we're going to do this... Oh, PC Unicorn says, was it a V8? Absolutely not. V8 is disgusting. I hate V8. And don't you dare tell me that I could have had a V8, because I'm not doing it. Okay, anyway. With a high intelligence, there's two classes that really stand out. but we're going to look at races first. So with our core races, dwarves get a bonus to Constitution, they get a bonus to Wisdom, and they take a penalty to Charisma. Well, since these are all +2s, that means that our Constitution will go up to 12, our Wisdom will go up to a 16, which is good, our Charisma will go down to a 7, which is a -2 penalty on Charisma. That's really punishing our Charisma, though. Let's try not to do that. So, what about elves? When we look at elves, they are a +2 to dexterity. That would put us up to a 14 dex, which is good. A +2 to intelligence, which would put us up to an 18 in intelligence, which is fantastic. A -2 to Constitution would put us down to an 8 and give us a -1 penalty on our hit points. It's not the worst thing ever, however, it's not great either. So maybe we don't do an elf. What about the gnomes? Actually, was there a grid that showed all the pluses and negatives? I forget. That way I don't have to keep clicking on these. Yes, there is, right here. Okay. So for gnomes, they get Constitution and Charisma minus Strength. So our Constitution would go up to 12, our Charisma up to 11, negating the penalty we're taking. Our Strength goes down to 11, negating the bonus that we had. So maybe not them. Half-elves, half-orcs, and humans can add a +2 to anything. Halflings get a bonus to dexterity and charisma, so our dex goes up to 14, our charisma goes up to 11. Our strength goes down, negating that bonus. So not a lot really going on for us there. But if we wanted to really capitalize on our intelligence, like if we want to be super intelligent, it looks like the only way to really go there is elf. I mean, there are others, but they're not great. And all total, the only one that gives a bonus to intelligence would be ratfolk, sylphs, or tieflings. Everybody knows what a tiefling is. Tieflings are now super common because they were introduced as a standard race in 4th edition, and they continue to be in 5th edition. Ratfolk are exactly what you think. They're rat people. They're anthropomorphic rats. And sylphs are elementals. So these are people who did not, or in their race, they didn't get it on with like dragons or ogres or orcs. They got it on with some kind of genie. Specifically an elemental genie. And now they have some of that. Sylphs are air people. Literally, they're airheads. So we could do one of those as well. And if we did that, the ratfolk take a penalty to strength. Sylphs take a penalty to constitution, which we really cannot sacrifice. Tieflings take a penalty to charisma, which we also cannot sacrifice. So maybe we do the ratfolk. Strength is the only one of these that we can really, survive with. You know what? Why don't we do that? We're going to do that. We're going to make a ratfolk. So we're going to capitalize on our intelligence. A ratfolk gets a bonus to intelligence and dexterity. And I know you can't see this. I know. I'll show the screen later. But our dexterity is going to go up to 14. Our intelligence up to 18. And our strength down to 11. Ratfolk, small. And because it's small, I can actually start filling in some of these things. For example, our armor class, because we're small, will get a bonus. which means that we get a +2 from our dexterity and a +1 from being small, which is going to give us a 13 armor class naked. That's not bad. Our fortitude save does not get a bonus. Our reflex is a +2, and our will save is also a +2. Okay, so I will just turn this off, and there we go. You can see what we got going on so far. The unicorn says, still at the other screen again. I know, I'm working on it. I said that I was working on it. Alright, so this is what we got. So we've got a rat folk, it's small, we've got some decent stats here. Now, our charisma, still very low. However, for a rat folk, that's kind of in line. I mean, who wants to be around a rat folk person? Our constitution, also pretty low. But we're a small rat folk. It kind of makes sense. Instead, what we have is some decent dexterity, some decent wisdom, and great intelligence. This means that we have two primary ways that we could go. There are two classes that prize intelligence over everything. Those are wizards, which is my personal favorite, or rogues. Rogues love intelligence because rogues get so very many skill points, and intelligence just gives them more skill points. So which do you think would we be better suited as? Well, our dexterity is decent. It's average, okay? We only get a plus, for a heroic character, it's average. And so, with no constitution, we would have to put ourselves in harm's way, and we would be relying pretty heavily on things like stealth. And if anything were to break our stealth, we would be somewhat of a glass cannon. In addition, if we wanted to use things like sneak attack, well, that's a melee strike. And so that's going to be using our strength, which is currently at an 11. We don't get any kind of bonus for it. So I am leaning away from a rogue unless you just wanted to build a skill monkey of some kind. Which is possible. It's good to have skills. Your other players at the table will love you for it. You will have the solution to everything. But what I think that we should be doing is I really think that we should be going with a wizard. Not only do I think it suits better, but I know it better. So we're going to make a rat folk wizard. Now, because we are making a wizard now, let's go ahead and take a quick look at the wizard. I spent a lot of time on this page. So first off, wizards only get a d6, which means that at level 1, our rat folk is only going to have 6 HP. Stay away from the fight, okay? However, wizards will get a bonus to their will saves. Alright, that's funny. PC Unicorn says, "You're a Harry wizard." Okay, you win 1 internet. You get 1 internet today. Alright, so wizards are going to get a +2 to their will saves. And I will show the screen as soon as I have all this updated. Because of that, that means their will is going to be a +4 at level 1, which is great. They don't get a whole lot of skills, and they don't have a whole lot of skills to work with, so you'll be able to fill everything easily enough. With a +4, wizards have appraise, craft, fly, knowledge, all of them, so you'll be able to fill all of them. Linguistics, profession, and spellcraft. So that's like 7 skills, and you'll have 6 points to use. You can't get everything, but you can get a lot. Wizards will get an arcane bond and an arcane school. So So arcane bond, arcane school. Let me change the text color here. Yes, I know you can't see it. I know. I know. Actually, I can go ahead and just show that. You don't need to stare at that screen while I do this. Arcane Bond, Arcane School, they get cantrips. And they can scribe scrolls. Let's not forget that you get a feat at level 1. Also, I did not grab the racial traits for rat folk. Let me just pop over here and I'll grab those. Cat folk, dog folk, rat folk. Here we go. Alright, so speed is slow. They only have a speed of 20 feet because they are small. They have short legs. Max HP, I'll just fill this in. That's going to be a 6. I forgot to update this on the human. That's 11. Now what do you get? Feat and skill racial traits. So they get Tinker, which gives them +2 racial bonus on craft, alchemy, which, I mean, we do have a craft, perception, which is not a class skill for us, and use magic device, which is a class skill for us. So we're going to get Tinker. They get Rodent Empathy, which gives them a +4 bonus on handling enemies, or handle animal to influence rodents. They also get Swarming. So if up to 2 rat folk can share the same square at the same time, if 2 rat folk in the same square attack the same foe, they are considered to be flanking. So we got Swarming. And they have Dark Vision, which is great. Everybody loves Dark Vision. Dark Vision is fantastic. Also, JP says arcane bonds and magical bounty hunters in D&D is cops and robbers. I mean, no, that's not what it means. We're going to get into that, though, because we can use that arcane bond. And we do get an extra feat. We'll get to the feat later, though, because let's show this again. So let's go ahead and look at the Arcane Bond and the Arcane School, because these are important. First off, Arcane Bond. Now, if you're not familiar with how this works in Pathfinder, I'm not going to go over it extensively. The rules are this. If you play a wizard, you are allowed an Arcane Bond, and this can come in one of 2 forms. You can either get a bonded item, think like a staff, a wand, whatever it happens to be, or a familiar. And a familiar is exactly what you think it is. It is a bonded animal with special abilities, and it is your animal. Now, when you pick a bonded objects give you benefits. Things like being able to cast special spells once per day, or things like that. So let's see, weapons are not made of special materials. If it's an amulet or ring, it must be worn, while staves, wands, and weapons must be held in one hand. If you attempt to cast a spell without your bonded item worn or in hand, you have to make a concentration check or lose a spell. However, a bonded object can be used once per day to cast any one spell the wizard has in your spellbook and is capable of casting even if the spell is not prepared. As long as you know it, you can cast it. It cannot be modified by metamagic feats, but that's fine. You can also add additional abilities to it, and it's great. Otherwise, though, if you pick a familiar, which we're going to do, then, you know, fantastic. Awesome. It's a good time for you. But we're going to go with a familiar. Why? Because familiars come with bonuses. So there are a lot of different familiars. Some of them are allowed, others are not allowed. Like this Archaeopteryx, Nobody's getting an Archaeopteryx in my games because I'm not allowing dinosaurs. That just doesn't make sense. But what we can do is say, you know what? We have a really, really bad charisma. Is there anything in here that we can use to buff our charisma? So we'll do a quick search. No. We can't do that. All right, so nothing to really buff our charisma. Well, if we can't really buff our charisma, then maybe we can buff our constitution. Now, we can't really buff our constitution directly, but some of these will have bonuses that we can take. For example, we can take a chicken. If we take a chicken, we get an additional 3 hit points. Then again, maybe we don't want a chicken. What if, because we are a rat folk, what if we wanted to have a rat for a familiar? That would make sense, wouldn't it? A rat would give us a +2 bonus on our fortitude saves. Since fortitude is directly linked back to constitution, and our constitution is poor, this would help us shore up our fortitude saves. So what if we go ahead and we say, for the arcane bond, a familiar rat, not Ray, rat, and because we picked that, it will give us a +2 to our fortitude save, which means our fortitude save is now a +2. Afterwards, we're going to need an arcane school. Now, arcane schools are similar to our familiars in that they're going to go ahead and give us bonuses and new abilities. So, for wizards, your traditional arcane schools are Abjuration, Conjuration, Divination, Enchantment, Evocation, Illusion, Necromancy, Transmutation, or you can be a Universalist. So, you're going to have to pick one of these. If you don't pick one, you're going to be a Universalist. But let's see what we can do and see how it helps us. So, Abjuration, I'm not going to go into all the different sub-schools, okay? I'm just going to do the basic ones. Abjuration, the Abjurer uses magic against itself. They are masters of the art of defensive and warding magics. At level 1, they gain a resistance of 5 to an energy type of their choice when they prepare spells. That means that if they were to, say, take resistance to cold, and somebody decides that they're going to shoot a ray of frost at them. A ray of frost deals 1d4 plus 1 damage. With a 5-point resistance to cold, even if they rolled max damage on a ray of frost, it wouldn't bother them. It also increases at level 11 to a 10, and at 20, they're completely immune to it. Also, Protective Ward. As a standard action, you can create a 10-foot radius of protective magic centered on you that lasts for a number of rounds equal to your intelligence modifier. We have a really high intelligence. That's 4 rounds. All allies in the area, including yourself, receive a +1 deflection bonus on their armor class. It also increases by a +1 for every 5 wizard levels you possess. And we can use it a number of times per day, equal to 3 plus our intelligence modifier, which again is really good. So if it lasts for 4 rounds, and we can cast it 7 times, that's 28 rounds of Protective Ward. That ain't bad, especially since we already have a pretty high armor class from our dexterity and our size. If we look at Conjuration, this focuses on summoning. So you get Summoner's Charm, whenever you cast a Conjuration summoning spell, you can increase the number of rounds equal to 1/2 of your wizard level to a minimum of 1. It is not double by extend spell. At the 20th level, you can change the duration of all summoned monster spells to permanent. But remember, we're a rat folk, and we also have rodent empathy. We even have a rat familiar. Rat swarms are a thing that we can summon. fact, I wonder if it's in here. Dire Rat at level 1. Human Natural Were-Rat. No, not that. Oh, is there no swarm? I thought there was a swarm. No, there's not a swarm. Maybe it's something separate. Either way, I mean, at level 1 we can summon a Dire Rat, and that's good enough. So, with Conjuration we can summon even more of those. We also get Acid Dart. As a standard action, we can unleash an Acid Dart, which hits any foe within 30 feet as a ranged touch attack. The dart deals 1d6 points of acid damage, plus 1 for every 2 wizard levels you possess. We can use it a number of times per day, equal to 3 plus our Great Intelligence modifier. 7 darts per day, that's 7d6 points of damage. In addition to all of the other spells we have. Divination, which is what ruins every DM's day. Forewarned, you can always act in the surprise round even if you fail a perception check to notice a foe, but you are still considered flat-footed. And Diviner's Fortune, when you activate the skill power, you can touch any creature as a standard action to give it an insight bonus on all of its attack rolls, skill checks, ability checks, and saving throws, equal to half your wizard level minimum of 1 for 1 round. You can use this ability a number of times per day, equal to 3 plus your intelligence modifier, which again is 7. Well, it gives us 7. Enchantment. Now, this is great for buffing yourself. Enchanting Smile gives you a +2 enhancement bonus on your Bluff, Diplomacy, and Intimidate skill checks. It also increases by 1 for every 5 wizard levels you possess. Now, keep in mind, our Charisma sucks. And so we're already taking a -1 penalty on all Bluff, Diplomacy, and Intimidate checks. Or at least Bluff and Diplomacy. If we take Enchantment, we can negate our, we can negate our Charisma. And Dazing Touch, you can cause a living creature to become dazed for 1 round as a melee touch attack. Creatures more hit dice than your wizard are unaffected. We can use this up to 3 times per day, plus our intelligence modifier. I think this is a really good way to go. Not to mention, this +2 will increase by 1 for every 5 levels, up to a maximum of 6 at level 20. I think Enchantment is the way to go. I mean, we can look at a few of these others. Evocation is throwing fireballs. I don't particularly want to look there. Illusion. This is similar to Conjuration. It just extends your illusions, so I don't really want to do that. Necromancy. I don't want to do that either. Transmutation. Physical Enhancement. You gain a +1 physical enhancement to 1 of your physical scores. That's Strength, Dexterity, or Constitution. It increases by 1 for every 5 levels you possess to a maximum of +5 at level 20. You can change this bonus to a new ability score when you prepare spells. That means that if we took Transmutation, we could choose 1, that's Strength, Dexterity, or Constitution, and we could kick it up. It's not going to help our Dexterity. It's not going to help our Constitution, but if we did that to Strength, we would get a +1 bonus on our Strength. I think I would rather go with the Enchantment, though, to negate the problem that we have with our Charisma. And then Universalist, we're not going to go into. Nope, I think Enchantment is the way to go. So for our Arcane School, I'm going to say School of Enchantment. And because of that, we get the Enchanting Smile. This does not say that it has any kind of limit on it. So that is just a straight up +2 to our Charisma, which kicks that up to 11. And there we go. So the rest of this is going to be fluff. So how your rat folk looks, are you male, are you female, what color are you, what kind of fur do you have? That is all things that you can use as your description, and you can make your character as diverse as you want. But just by rolling these stats and playing with the numbers that we were given, we've determined our race, we've determined our class, and now we have a rat folk wizard. And the question here is this a character that you would have made on your own? The answer to that is probably a no. And this is why I wanted to talk about tabletop gaming and diversity, because there are so many different characters that you can make. Very few people will play most of them. Most everybody wants to play a certain kind of subset of classes. You're going to want to be the hero. Whether that is a barbarian in like a Conan style, or a paladin in the knight in shining armor style, or a fighter in the gruff, just kind of, mercenary style. You're going to want to play a hero, or maybe you want to be the grand wizard, grand sorcerer, whatever it happens to be. So you're playing a wizard, a sorcerer, a warlock, whatever it happens to be, you're going to be, just the big magic person. If you go more dexterity bonus, you're going to be the rogue, the ranger, whatever it happens to be. If you go like the nature spirit, you'll be a druid or a ranger. Everybody plays the same kind of archetypes over and over again because they're common. They work well. We know these things. Very few people mix it up. I mean, we all fall into certain traps. We all fall into certain ruts. We all know that what we want to play. This forces you to do something that is outside of your normal comfort zone. Maybe you don't want to play a human fighter because human fighters are boring. Until you actually do it and realize that the human fighter is essentially a blank canvas for you to make them whatever you want. Do you want to be just like a mercenary who's out there working for hire, or would you like to turn your human into the Witcher? Like, do you know what the Witcher is? Excluding the fact that the Witcher is enhanced. And I don't know the full extent to the enhancements of a Witcher. I know that they get like special vision, so they can like see at night. Well, there's things that we can do for that. We can give a human dark vision, or at least low light vision. I think Witchers are also like resistant to supernatural things, but I'm not positive. I've never played the games and I've never read the books. Okay, so cut me some slack here. I don't know. The other thing that a Witcher is, though, is prepared. Like, a Witcher, as far as I understand it, carries weapons on them. They carry a regular sword, they carry a silver sword, they carry like a magic sword. I think that's like it. Along with, any other weapons they might need. Like, they'll carry something to kill vampires, they'll carry something to kill werewolves, they'll carry something to kill witches. That's what they do. They're prepared for whatever it is that they come across. That is a fighter archetype. Traditionally speaking, fighters carry everything they need. Your typical fighter will pick like one two-handed weapon that they want. Whether that is like a two-handed hammer, axe, spear, whatever it happens to be. And then they'll typically carry a couple of one-handed weapons in the other damage types. So if they carry a spear, well, that's going to be piercing damage. And that's two-handed. But they also might carry a one-handed sword on them for slashing damage. They may carry a mace on them for bludgeoning damage. They may also be carrying a shield, just in case they need that. And as they level up, they'll carry a silver weapon, they'll carry a cold iron weapon, they'll carry a magic weapon, because they are prepared for everything they're going to walk into. And for our duelist here, who is already focused on using light weapons, you might forego the spear entirely and just focus on those. You've already got the rapier, which does piercing damage, so maybe carry a small sword, which I believe is also considered light. I think it's considered light. And that'll give you your slashing. And I don't know if a mace is considered light or not. I could probably look it up. Let's see. Equipment. And weapons. Where are they? There they are. Light martial weapons. I'll bring this up. So, for our finesse to work, we need to stick to this list of light melee weapons. And so, we've got a cat of nine tails. That's always fun. That does slashing damage. So we could use that. Claw blades, you gotta have claws for that, so that's not gonna work. There's a light hammer that does bludgeoning damage and is considered a light weapon. So just like that, with a rapier, a light hammer, and the cat of nine tails, we have all of our different damage types covered. But there's also a machete if you want slashing damage, and machetes are always useful. By the way, down here's a ratfolk tailblade. You have to be a ratfolk to use that. Fortunately, we just made a ratfolk. So that's always an option. Not for our human, but it's there. And so your human could be prepared to duel literally anything. Literally everything. It's a matter of how you play the class and how you want to dress it up. And again, male, female, black, white, red, yellow, doesn't matter. You can make your character however you want. Similarly with our ratfolk, we just took a trip through the schools and decided to make our character an enchantress, more or less. We didn't necessarily go into what that means. So we know that we got a bonus to our charisma from enchanting. However, your arcane school, and I'll go ahead and turn this back on. So a wizard can choose to specialize in a school of magic, gaining additional spells and powers based on that school. It must be made at the first level and cannot be changed. So when you choose one school, you must select two other schools as your opposition schools, representing knowledge sacrifice, so you got to give up two of those. I always say give up necromancy. It's not usually worth it. And it cannot be divination. You're not allowed to give up divination. Otherwise, everybody would. So, you know, maybe necromancy and abjuration. Okay, so we give those up. There we go. So each arcane school gives the wizard a number of school powers. In addition, specialist wizards will receive an additional spell slot of each spell level they can cast from the first level up. Each day, they can prepare a spell from his specialty school in that slot. It must be in the wizard's spell book. The wizard can select a spell modified by metamagic feats, but it uses up a higher level spell. And so when we're looking at that, why don't we just, before we get out of here, because I know I'm running out of time here. The Sorcerer Wizard spell list, if we look at things like enchantment, I'm going to go to the first level. This is what our enchantment Ratfolk Wizard is playing with. So, aphasia prevents a target from understanding a language. Basically, you can just deafen somebody. Bungle. The target takes a minus 20 penalty on their next attack roll or check. Yeah. Charm Fey works like Charm Person, but it's only on Fey. Charm Person, of course, is there, which means you can just cast the spell on somebody and they become your friend, which is useful if you have a really poor charisma check. If you can't, if you can't convince them, just dazzle them with magic. So, Deja Vu, make a creature repeat its actions, even if those actions are harmful. Hypnotism, you can fascinate 2d4 hit dice of creatures. That's always fun. Keep Watch, you are treated as having a night's rest while staying awake. Yes, it is as overpowered as you think it is. You don't need to sleep anymore. That's in the enchantment school. I mean, maybe there's a rule about it. Let's see. This spell enables a subject to stand watch or keep vigil throughout the night without any ill effects. The subject suffer no fatigue and gain all the usual benefits of a full night's rest. Subjects do gain hit points as though from resting. Wizards may prepare spells as though they had slept for 8 hours, and so on. Effects that rely on actual sleep or dreaming are ineffective, although they're still susceptible to things that will put them to sleep. So yes, with this spell, you can literally never sleep again. Lock Gaze, you compel the target to look only at you for the duration of the spell. Memorize Page, you can just instantly mentally photograph something, or you can make somebody forget something. Moment of Greatness is wonderful because it will double morale bonuses. If you have a wizard who knows Moment of Greatness, and you have a bard in the party, you have something that dungeon masters absolutely despise. It is a common pair, and it's awful. Because those moments of greatness happen a lot. So just like you can use Keep Watch to never sleep again, the sleep spell puts 4 hit dice of creatures to sleep. Or Unprepared Combatant. They take a -4 on initiative and reflex saves. These are all enchantments, and our rat folk gets 1 additional spell slot for 1 of these. Again, if you use that spell for Keep Watch, your rat folk never has to sleep again. And it's a free spell slot. There you go. Did you ever see yourself playing a rat folk wizard that never has to sleep? And by the way, not only can you use that extra spell slot for Keep Watch and never have to sleep, you get bonuses for enchantment spells. So you can take the sleep spell. You are now a rat folk wizard who never sleeps, and you can literally just walk through a place, cast sleep, do whatever you want, and walk out. You can walk into the local general store, cast the sleep spell, rob the place, and walk out. Hopefully you don't get caught, but I mean, who's going to catch you? The storekeeper that's sleeping? This is why I wanted to talk about diversity in gaming, because there is so much there that people ignore. And the people that are currently making Wizards of the are making Dungeons and Dragons, the people working at Wizards of the Coast, have no idea how any of this works. They have never played Dungeons and Dragons. They don't know anything about it. They've never read anything about it. All they see, as I stated before, are problems in need of solutions. This is why they're getting into everything. It's not just Dungeons and Dragons. Pathfinder has the same problem. Warhammer has the same problem. Battletech has the same problem. All of these different hobbies, and it's not just tabletop gaming, it is all hobbies, are being infiltrated by people who think that these hobbies are problematic and that they are the hero that needs to come in and fix it. We see the same thing going on in Hollywood right now, where people are going into any property, whether that's Marvel, whether that's Star Wars, whatever it is, and they are changing the properties. They're changing the characters, they're writing their own lore. The reason they're doing it is because there are names that have gone down in history. Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, other directors, Quentin Tarantino, who else? James Cameron. And for that matter, Gary Gygax. These are names that have gone down in history because they created something monumental. They created something that will last far beyond their own lifetime. It will last for generations afterwards. These people are giants. They are heroes. They are something to aspire towards. And who doesn't want to be one of those people that is remembered forever? The problem is that right now there are many people who want to be remembered. They want to be, they want to be regarded as heroes, but they're not. And so the only thing that they can do is to latch on to something that is already monumental so that they can share in that glory. If they can create something that is attached to it, then they too believe that they will also be regarded as a glorious hero for generations to come. But not everyone is a hero. Not everyone was ever meant to be a hero, and not everyone is capable of it. And sometimes in doing so, you'll actually destroy the thing that you wanted to become heroic for. Which is what we're seeing right now in basically everything. Just all of it. Everywhere. But if you do want to be heroic, if you want to be the hero of the story, I would suggest sitting down, making a character for a tabletop game, whether it's a character that you came up with yourself, or if you want to try and do something that you've never done before, just roll some dice, see where they lay, and make something out of it. If you want to try being heroic, that's the way to do it. And who knows? Maybe after you've gotten the experience, maybe then you'll be inspired to create something better. After all, it was Paizo that looked at what Dungeons & Dragons was and said, we can do better than that. And they did. You too can do something better than what we have. You just don't go through and change the thing that you're inspired by. You use the inspiration to build something new. And make it better in the process. So before I get out of here, there were a couple of chats. JP said swarming is how you end up with the Rat King. I mean, maybe. JP also said a wild link appears. Did somebody have to say chickens? How about clay pots? Look, chicken familiars are awesome. Number 1, you get 3 HP. Number 2, you get eggs. It's not in the book, but I mean, if you've got a chicken, you get eggs. And so you get free food. Chicken familiar. Do not sleep on the chicken familiar. Also, from what I've heard, chickens are very affectionate. I don't know, I never had a pet chicken. So, don't sleep on the chicken familiar. Unicorn says, going to make a mace with the top half of a ball cut off and a light enchantment on the top half. Call it mag. It's a be specialized in light weapons. Ah, I get it. That's funny. However, I mean, you can actually do that. When you cast light on an object, you can choose how it lights. So you can choose whether it projects light in all directions, or you can choose the direction of the light. And so if you get light and you get the permanency spell, you can make a maglite. You can literally just make a maglite out of it. And since it's still technically a mace, you can even beat people with it. Which is what they do with maglites. PC Unicorn also says, so no defense against Jigglypuff. No. Jigglypuff's sleep ability is special. It's literally considered a special ability in the Pokemon games, so it would be considered a magical ability in Dungeons & Dragons. Someday on my list is a Pokemon game. So maybe when we get done with the Warhammer module, we can look at Pokemon. When we get to that point, we'll look into things like that. And PC Uncle also says the pet beholder. I'm not sure what a reference that was to, but nobody's having a pet beholder. Beholders are intelligent. They would not do good as pets. JP says randomize everything. I agree. Randomize your characters. Try new things. Force yourself to try new things. You may find something that you didn't even realize you liked, but you won't know until you do it. And tabletop gaming is a great place to do that, because even if you don't like what it is, you can change course. So, with that being said and done, I'm going to go ahead and end this. I want to thank everybody for coming out here. I saw some new faces, and JP, your icon changed. I was happy to see that. You're yellow now, and that's great. I got to find out what that means, though. Tomorrow is the normal tabletop stream, so we'll be working on Psychers for Warhammer 40k. I have no idea what I'm getting into here. It's going to be weird, I'm sure. So we'll be doing that then. So if you want to be here for the tabletop stream tomorrow, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon. That way you get notified whenever the video comes out. Which, I mean, it'll be out the same time this stream was. And if you're watching this afterwards, it'll be out 10 a.m. Eastern time, same time as always. I keep it scheduled for a reason. If you know somebody else who is also into tabletop gaming, especially if they're one of the people who has a problem with tabletop gaming right now, who says, oh no, tabletop gaming is problematic, it's sexist, it's racist, it's everything else, share this stream with them. Whether you just watch the first half where we discuss it, or you watch the second half where we actually went through and showed how diverse these characters are, either way, prove them wrong. There is nothing wrong with tabletop gaming right now. Tabletop gaming is probably the best thing in all of gaming right now. So, share it. Otherwise, though, if you just like me, leave a like on the stream. I appreciate it. It doesn't really mean a whole lot, but it makes me feel better. If you have any comments that you want to leave, I mean, after the chat is gone, because chat goes away after the stream, you can leave it in the comments down below. Even better, though, join the Discord. And if the link doesn't work, leave a comment and say the link doesn't work. And then I will get you your own invite link. But join the Discord. That way you can not only leave comments there, but you can chat with everybody else on the Discord server, and you can join the behind the screen channel if you want to play with us. Just go to that channel, let me know what your availability is, and I will find a group that will fit you. I mean, I already have one group going. If I get enough people for a second group, I will find a way to make it work. And if I get enough people for 6 groups, I will find people capable of being dungeon masters themselves, and I will teach them to DM, and we will have multiple games going on at once. This could be the start of a great empire of tabletop gaming. Who knows? Otherwise, though, I will see everybody hopefully at the tabletop module stream tomorrow. If not, I will see you next week for the lecture. And until that happens, until then, take care.